Kawan sini mas pergi. Das du Bild. That's enough. No, that's mine. Oh, that's yours.
Nikik aliban, nakurao, nakikatik, nikisich inaus. Tikin nakam chirish, kamalimak anakam. Saliok alshkap tiap, tomahi nikisnauli ko. Mahi nikisnauli kachuchel. Saliok alshkap tiap, mak anakaye. Na ulak lish ori likutan, sesh jalal na mohek. Saliok alshkap tiap, lao nakamuk sakal linak ut nakakuy. Lao nakakuy li shokwal chunil. Nakana salikaholom. Lao anakwan nakahli atinak ut li nakam likakwatin. Likatiawae nikesyeqe nakli mukonak sachta. Nanome ut nakechak lisuris.
Santiago Atitlan. The Sutuil Indians call this place Rukuks Ruhileu, the heart of the world. Perhaps that's because ancient traditions are still so strong in this village. Maybe it's also because Santiago Atitlan is the sanctuary of Mashimon. In order to protect their culture from the onslaught of the Spanish conquest, the Sutuils kept their old Mayan gods disguised as Christian saints. Mashimon is the protector of tradition. With his vices and virtues, he is a god on a human scale. The Rilach Mam, grandfather of the whole world, listens to his offspring. He knows their suffering. Because in Santiago Atitlan, below its colors and its beauty, the land guards the memory of vast and violent death.
There used to be very few problems here. Not a lot of death. It's different now.
Death came when they arrived 11 years ago.
You couldn't go out after 7 or 8 at night anymore. There they were, standing on the corners. They murdered thousands of us and left the bodies lying in the streets. When our husbands went off to the fields with their food, the soldiers would take it away from them and accuse them of feeding the guerrillas.
All these years they were kidnapping people. Every day we'd find someone else dead, tied to a tree. There was a horrible slaughter here. Thousands of people were killed and abducted. We couldn't stop weeping as our neighbors and relatives were killed. We wondered why death had come to us. We'd never known anything like this. Why? Who told them to come here? One day, on December 2nd, they forced open the door of a peasant's house and he called out to the neighbors for help. Get up, get up. People got together and said, let's go and protest to their leader. Let's ring the bells and wake people up.
Everybody up, everybody up. And that's what happened. People were saying, the army's killing us. Get up, the army's murdering people.
Everybody was saying, let's go and protest. The two mayors were out in front with a white flag. When we got there, we greeted the soldiers. It was about 1 in the morning. Without any mercy, they started shooting.
There were lots of people. 13 died. Many were wounded. I found my son with a bullet hole in his head.
The poor boy got a bullet near his stomach. He just took a handful of dirt and put it on the wound. When I found him, he was already dead. The soldier said, "Why do you cry? Do you want us to shoot more?" The army ruled supreme in Guatemala for 30 years. In 1985, they let civilians onto the front stage while staying in control. With support from the United States, then Israel, the country became a laboratory for the latest counterinsurgency methods developed by Western armies.
Any demand for more power to ordinary people was held to be subversive. Terror was the response. The army took complete control. One million peasants were rounded up for duty in so-called self-defense units. Their task is to keep a watchful eye on their neighbors. General Benedicto Lucas Garcia was chief of the General Staff during the period of darkest repression in 1981 and 82. The elite forces and the village units were his work.
I've spent my whole life as a leader of Guatemala's elite forces. I've always liked being in charge of them. I've always been in the field because I'm not one of those comfort-loving men who sit back in a soft chair. I even had to shorten my signature in order to sign documents faster and have more time in the field. I got interested in upgrading the army. I'm pragmatic, a practical man who knows what he's doing. Ever since I was a second lieutenant when I returned from France, I've used French tactics. I learned lots of guerrilla and anti-guerrilla stuff there. In France, they went through the Vietnam period, then Dien Bien Phu, and later Algeria, Morocco, and all that. So I brought all that experience back, and I started to take my men into action again and again and again until I made them into real soldiers, combat troops, mountain troops, field troops.
In 1981, General Benedicto Lucas sends his troops into action. He calls it a pacification campaign. Every detail has been planned and practiced. "250 villages are burned down, 20,000 peasants killed. Thousands more go missing." It is one of the bloodiest massacres in all of America since the conquest. "11 years later, thousands of families are still on the run. Driven from their land by the army and its massacres, they found shelter in the forests of northern Guatemala. They number more than 15,000, hunted by the army, who accuses them of helping the guerrillas. Their freedom is at the risk of death.
All of us here have suffered terribly. We've seen our people spill their blood, but we don't want to leave. The soldiers are the ones who should get out. We want to work, and we know how. We're all peasants. We haven't got any weapons. We're civilians who work the fields with machetes. We plant corn and they cut it down. We plant manioc and they destroy it. We plant banana trees and they cut those down too. We have chickens and they steal them. We have to move off into the wilderness because we know that when the army comes, they'll kill us. That's why we keep moving.
The communities that resist, as they're known, are organized in a network scattered deep in the forest. Day after day, they defy the soldiers. These people stick together. They have always lived and worked this way.
I'm responsible for the news. I listen to the radio news every day, Monday through Saturday. Then we put it all together on sheets of paper and send them around to each community. We heard on the radio about the massacre in Santiago Atitlan. We felt terrible about our brothers and sisters being slaughtered. People said afterwards that it's better for us to continue resisting here in our communities.
Solo ustedes. Maduro. Vamos así.
Lo que nosotros sabemos, pues, porque como no tenemos mucho estudio.
We haven't done much studying, but we know that since the time of the Mayas, the indigenous people in Guatemala have been excluded, exploited, discriminated against by the rich. Our people have never stopped struggling. We have never bowed to the powerful. To this very day, our people continue to stand up. We want to be respected as people, as human beings, and especially as Guatemalans, because in Guatemala, most of us are natives.
Como persona, como ser humano, y sobre todo como guatemaltecos, porque en Guatemala la mayoría somos indígenas.
Today, a long-awaited visit. For the first time in years, a helicopter that doesn't bring destruction. After international pressures and long negotiations with the army, the Bishop of Quiché, Monsignor Julio Cabrera, has been allowed to visit these communities on the run.
I never thought that I'd be able to visit these people. I've been all over El Quiché. I've visited almost every hamlet. But I've never been able to come here in the communities that resist. Today I'm extremely happy to be here. What I see makes me understand just how bad the atrocities committed by the army have been. Your mind refuses to believe that what people tell you is real. What I had heard was already very bad, but what really happened was even worse.
10 años de persecución por parte del ejército de Guatemala. Y por si esto fuera poco,
the Guatemalan army carried out 10 years of persecution.
ha llegado a tanto el odio a ustedes y la
Their hate for you reached a point where they even began to poison rivers or springs or the salt that you'd stored outside.
envenenar los ríos o las fuentes de agua. Se ha llegado a envenenar.
Grenades were left under corpses so that when you went to recover your dead, they would explode and kill even more people.
Para que cuando alguien iba a traer a sus muertos, ahí explotaran las granadas y murieran muchos más.
¿Por qué se ensañaron?
Why were they so brutal with these people? Why? I can't tell you. I've thought for a long time that they want to exterminate the indigenous people any way they can, just because they're indigenous. But now they're going to be dealing with a church that isn't willing to accept that. We want to be close to the natives, even if it means risking our lives.
There are others who hide in the forest. These others carry weapons. They are part of the longest-lasting guerrilla movement in the Americas. They took up arms when a military coup overthrew Guatemala's first elected government back in 1954. Since then, they've put down roots in several parts of the country. Most of the guerrilleros are young native people. The repression has left them little choice.
In 1982, the army came into our village and took it over. They killed my mom and burned her. They took my two sisters away, and they've never been found again.
Some of these guerrilleros have been here for 20 years. Peace is now on the agenda, but so far talks between the guerrillas and the government have achieved nothing. Most of the fighters trust only their weapons to defend their lives and what they believe in. The guerrilleros have just paid a visit at this coffee plantation. The owner had refused to pay his workers the minimum wage, $2 a day, so his property was torched. In Guatemala, the question of land is at the center of life. The Mayas hold the land to be sacred. It's the source of all life and can belong to no individuals. But 70% of the farmland now belongs to 2% of the population. Most of the others have to work on the large plantations. Season after season, they depend on starvation wages. As recently as 30 years ago, The owners didn't even have to pay their laborers. Today, $1 a day is the norm. They are no better off than before. It's party time, and the president himself is guest of honor. The host is the Sandoval Valladares family. They're well-established landowners, aristocrats. The patriarch is a former diplomat and senator. He is also one of the founders of a political party called the National Liberation Movement, ultra-right, anti-communist, and behind many of Guatemala's military coup d'etat.
My name is Armando Sandoval, Alarcón, Montalvo, Aguilar, Figueroa, Calderón, Serna, Teres de Girón. I'm very proud of all my last names, and very proud to be a descendant of those Spaniards who gave us the race, the culture, the religion, and the language. The conquest was such a brilliant thing.
The annual folklore festival is a big event in the town of Coban. High society gets together to pick the Rabin Ajao, Miss Maya, the Indian queen. General Benedicto Lucas Garcia is a strong promoter of the festival.
I've always lived with the indigenous people. I feel very Indian. I speak the Quechua language, and that fills me with pride. I've struggled to improve their lives.
The general is now retired. 10 years after his pacification campaign, he remembers nothing bad. He did only what was right.
We military people are professionals. And you yourselves know that because you went with me. I remember you very well. I invited you. I never caused any massacres or anything like that. I risked my life face to face. I never kidnapped anybody. Never mind what they say. I'm a man of social sensitivity. I love my people. I love these peasants. I adore them. Everything I do is in order to make their lives easier. In Santiago Atitlan, at 2 in the morning, someone puts a group together and rings the bells. The whole thing was a setup. It was all planned ahead of time. The mayor of Santiago Atitlan was a guerrilla commander. He stirred up the whole thing. He brought the people and the children out in front. What happened in Vietnam? Why did the U.S. lose the war in Vietnam? Because of the same tactics they're using here. So let's not be silly. We won't be fooled by something like that. Let's be practical. People are manipulated like puppets by international forces in order to create a bad image of our country or to make worse the problems we are having. Here it means nothing for someone to shout, "Hey, my husband disappeared," or "Oh, my wife disappeared." But if we go to look for him in Cuba, there he is. Or if we go to look for her in Mexico, there she is. They haven't disappeared, but they're involved in a movement that's trying to damage the image of Guatemala, our beloved Guatemala.
The scale of Guatemala's tragedy is only slowly being discovered. The mass graves hold thousands. Here, at the village of Chontala, a few miles from the famous tourist center of Chichicastenango, the families waited 10 years, saying nothing, before they dared to dig up their dead. Today, they do so at great risk.
81. Entonces ahí es cuando el ejército pues
1981. That's when the army came into this district and started to slaughter people.
empezó a masacrar pues a la gente del cantón pues y mi familiar pues aquí vive nada más.
My relatives lived just over there among those apple trees.
Ahí está cerca de la casa.
At about 5 in the morning, they got all the people together in the chapel.
Y los reunieron allá en una capilla. Después ahí los
After that, they tortured them and poured gas over them.
quemaron, los echaron gasolina.
They burned them, and then they buried them.
Por eso la
People
gente
are
nos
terrified to speak out because they've threatened us. They've said, whoever reports anything will end up in the same hole in the ground.
Human rights groups have worked to shield the villagers from the threats. Because in Guatemala, the authorities are not always there to protect people.
Podría ser el hijo, ¿eh? Se puede. Dejémoslo pues. Esperemos un rato.
Ah, sí,
Ella mira que parece que sí. ¿A quién? ¿A un su hijo o a su...?
Parece su marido. Y ojalá pues, Cesaro shiprikin suke, si ko shipishik, kush, ishke, mi wasari unakila kamnak, so tanji kish out sorry kachachke.
San Andres Sabcabaja. According to the holy book of the Mayas, the Pak Buch, this is the birthplace of the first Quiche people and the last bastion of native resistance to the conquest. 5 centuries later, the story is still being told. Several times a year, the conquest ritual replays the bravery of the Quiche and their chief Tecumuman as they fought the Spanish invaders. To the Quiche, the chief never really died. He's waiting for the best moment to return and liberate his people. The church walls at San Andres Sabcabaja still guard their dark secret. No one talks openly, but everyone remembers. In 1980, 14,000 people lived in the village. 2,000 were murdered right there. 1,000 disappeared. The walls bear silent witness. There are more than 200 bodies buried here. Everywhere, the memory of death. A recent history as brutal as the ancient past. Tradition keeps the memory alive. The Mayas' procession of the cross tells the story of their own trials.
Rela oli kam khunahki, rakamik utnaraqe uthalan li qabe. Rela oli kamenak tohyoyo uthalan liskutan. La ono kwatinak ruknelach kamenak utnikaye prenak inka kamenake kamanike shelach saqe. Lishchol reli kamenak nashik sali ti mahun kwana sach.
To tell you the truth, I feel like I'm in Gone with the Wind. We're living through the end of an era, a time that's about to disappear.
The Sandoval Valladares family owns Guatemala's greatest collection of native paintings, but they are strangers in the world of the Maya. From their universe, they look with distrust at the other.
Este es un pueblo de gente buena.
These are good people. The indigenous are good, patient, and long-suffering. My fear comes from the fact that gentle people suddenly become irritated, and they're dangerous. People like this eventually become desperate. In 17-something, when the French Revolution took place, there was no perestroika. Here people think that because there's perestroika now, social upheaval has come to an end, but that's not the case. Hunger doesn't need perestroikas. Poverty doesn't need perestroikas.
Les contaba hace un momento que hace 2000 años Pilatos llamó al pueblo judío a votar.
2,000 years ago, Pontius Pilate called on the Jewish people to vote for either Jesus Christ or Barabbas. Barabbas, the thief, the murderer. And the Jewish people voted for Barabbas, which shows how people can be manipulated. As I see it, we should have a guided democracy, a controlled democracy.
Este simple instrumento marcará la historia de Guatemala.
Úselo bien. Vote, vote, y el general Efraín Ríos Montt será el presidente de Guatemala.
Todos juntos, para tener una vida mejor.
La gente unida de Guatemala.
Dice la Constitución que tenemos que construir una sociedad fraterna.
¡Una sociedad fraterna!
Nosotros estamos ahorita.
We've got our eyes closed for the time being. Why? Because they're all trying to play the good guy. They're saying, over here, I'm the good guy. No, I'm the good guy. But we still don't know who the good guy is.
Vote.
General Benedicto Lucas is also running for president.
What Guatemala needs now is men who have something in their britches, not demagogues.
Vote.
It's a party that's always been there to defend freedom in Guatemala. The party that kept Guatemala from becoming America's first Cuba in 1954.
Vote.
Colonel Luis Sosa Avila is the candidate for the National Liberation Movement. He, too, has a program for the indigenous people.
Se va a mantener. El folclore.
We're going to keep our Guatemalan folklore because it's one of Guatemala's beauties. We're even going to transport it to the United States and put it in a Disney World stand so that the whole world can get to know our folklore.
Al mundo entero.
Kunshit akal alshka psia niqatiawae shije naqse shosha ushri kulbal rib li saeut lipo sali shosha chihunil timambil liqachpachil maya naqtinje ayak ere sali shosha kwan li ekyal li naleb anaq kwan sali shosha naq yere lao naq chal reli akutan ti akutan kamanekesheli santilhu Chihunil na ojek salish jalal. Chihunil na raqe naqtin ulaq salish naq tuktukilal. Mahun kwa nishnau chihunilinim. Utrimas nim akal uslikachol na kwan setenamit. Tekanae nikishkutke lishe masnim. Na hokan kamaan la onu kopakliki.
That's why we must begin to speak out, participate, and demand our rights. If we just keep our heads down forever, begging forgiveness, they will never respect us. Therefore, as Native people, we have to stand up.
Gradually, Native and grassroots organizations are becoming bolder. They make themselves felt whenever they can.
The others shouldn't be afraid just because we indigenous people are getting together. Sometimes they think the natives are rising up and they're going to take revenge on us. But we're not thinking of revenge.
What happened in Santiago Atitlan is unique in Guatemala's history. After the massacre in December 1990, the villagers as well as international public opinion forced the army to withdraw. Today there's peace. The people look after their own security.
Now we have to take care of ourselves. Our brothers go out on night watch. If our husbands were still alive, they'd be out too. We don't want the soldiers back here. We're all right now, even though our husbands and friends had to die.
No more soldiers here. If they came back, then everyone would rise up. Every last person here in Atitlan is resisting. We've got them out of here. They weren't any good to anybody. Nobody here wants more trouble. We've come together with our mayor. We want no more killers, no more people firing guns. We all agree on that. Our town is free now, so let them think twice before their next move. Here our customs haven't died out. Our parents taught us to keep them alive. If we didn't keep up our ways, everything would die. White corn, yellow corn, beans would all disappear. We'd lose the taste for life itself. That would be the end of our people and our kind of life.